What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to episode 114 of the Lombard Trucking Show. Very glad to be here. I know it's been a minute since April 9th. I can't believe, April has been going on for quite a while. I can't even lie. It's been a long month. It's been, there's been a lot of events, a lot of activities going on between Broker Carrier Summit, and that's what I'm here to talk about this evening. But number one, first and foremost, check these shades out right now. Check out and this is a non-paid promotion, by the way. This is just some good information. Got these from the boys at WBS Apparel. These are called Glocks. I ran the Austin Marathon in these sunglasses. You can do anything you want to do in these sunglasses. You're going to need them for summer. It's coming. So go on and get some. Little preview, little sneak peek though. We're working with the boys at WBS Apparel. They're into the mission. They support what Lombard Trucking is trying to do with the narrative of health and wellness. So you might be seeing some merchandise be coming down the line from them very soon. So quick shout out on the Glocks. Also, check the fresh jersey. Pick this up at the Broker Carrier Summit. Big shout out to the people at Green Screens. And I'm going to give them a prime shout out, but just in case you were wondering, because it is baseball season, if you thought this was like a minor league team, not quite. It's a professional freight team that does stuff with AI, and I'm going to give them a shout out in a minute. But let's get right into it. I know it's been a couple weeks. Really appreciate you guys tuning in, especially to the last episode with Gord and Chris. Indie Trucker Chris Thomas was going to join me at the Broker Carrier Summit. Unfortunately, if you follow him on Twitter, you saw he had a little parking dilemma over at the Ridge up there in Kentucky. And he ended up, he needs some stuff fixed on his truck with some land management issues that him with his parking. So wishing him well, hoping everything's going well with that. Even though he couldn't join, the event itself, when it comes to these events, like when it came to the Mid-America Truck Show, when it came to going to Broker Carrier Summit, I want to be at these events. I want to go to them. But like anything or like any event, you have on the books, like even if it's a vacation, that leading up to it, sometimes there's a little bit of anxiety because there's so much going on in quote unquote real life that you're like, oh, I need to get all this stuff done. It's just very hectic. You can't just like go into it and enjoy it. Like it's a smooth transition. Like you're just working all the way up until it. And then you finally just got to go to the airport and go and then get in the zone, auto zone to be at these events. But then when you're there, you're just like, it's just like you got used to the cold water and the cold shower. And so number one, for those of you guys who don't know what the Broker Carrier Summit is, it is its own standalone event. There are sponsors for it. I know TAFS was a title headline sponsor for the event, so they do help out a lot. Great team over there, by the way. I met them back at F3, hung out with those guys for a little bit. One of the gentlemen, native Kansas City guy, Midwesterner. So you can always trust the Midwest boys. You know that Lombard Trucking Show. It might be the top podcast for Midwest respecting. Not too many out there waving the banner for the Midwest, but we do that here. So it's a standalone event. Dan Lindsay, big guy who kind of started this whole thing, along with former guest show Trey Griggs. I say former, he will return on there. But so some gentlemen, they realized the problem, and we talked about it when Trey came on the show. There's a problem, right? And a lot of people who come on this show want to solve problems. I'm trying to solve a problem. Everybody in this industry, that's what I love so much. What I love about doing the show is talking to people who literally just want to get stuff done. And nobody's looking to make millions. Nobody's looking to like walk out of here with, Lamborghinis. Well, I know you guys, the brokers, I know you guys want your G-Wagons, but let's be real, pipe dream. But for the most part, none of these people are looking to get rich off of this stuff. They see a problem and they just want to see where they can make people's lives easier. So we have a problem. We talk about communication a lot in this industry, and the biggest disconnect lies between that of motor carriers and freight brokers. What's crazy is, as we continue to keep growing this network on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and we're getting truckers on LinkedIn, and like we're getting people from the industry, so to speak, from freight and freight tech onto Twitter to mingle and talk. And where this Discord, the Lost Freight Discord, is growing, there is, like, we sometimes forget how large the freight industry still is. Like, it is still, we're talking millions of trucks, we're talking hundreds of thousands of loads. You're not going to get everybody under that same type of environment. You're not going to get everybody in the Discord. You're not going to get everybody on Twitter kind of all in the same wavelength. And so where we think progress is being made, it is still deteriorating elsewhere. And for any proof of that, just go on Facebook, which is, an absolute cesspool. Maybe the platform in general, I know Meta is whatever, they own Instagram, sure, but Facebook groups. And we talked about it when Trey Griggs was on the show. I'm still in, I'm in a Texas CDL drivers page. I'm in several trucker Facebook groups, and the hate and discontent that is still, spoken about on some of these pages are just uncanny, when in reality, there are people who are trying to solve these problems. And that's what the Broker Carrier Summit is all about. Brand new. And for a very new event, talk about growth right there. I mean, I got to speak at the event, and I'll get into that in a minute, but I get to speak in front of 350 people. And the grand scheme of things, when you think of events, to fill a banquet room at a hotel like that, not an easy thing to do, especially kind of started from scratch. Thing was basically pretty bootstrapped for the most part. This wasn't something that came with large financial funding or anything like that. These are guys who wanted to put something together, and now it's grown as a ways to get, because there are no events like it. That's the thing. That's what has made this event so special, and why anybody watching on LinkedIn, anybody especially who's a trucker, whether or not you're a carrier, if you work for a carrier, you guys need this message the most, because they're going to have the event again at the end of the year. And it was probably about 50-50-ish. Trey can correct me if I'm wrong on the numbers, but this is not, because the thing is like a carrier can work with, a carrier only hauls one load at a time, especially if you're a single truck operator. It is more beneficial for carriers to for less brokers to meet more carriers, because brokers need, access to more carriers, so that way they can book more loads. So this is an event for more carriers to really come to overall. But so let's go dive right into the event. I mean, I was invited to speak at this event by Trey to talk about driver health and wellness and give my testimony. And recently I gave a presentation to Hays County bus drivers here in Central Texas, where I essentially gave the stats, talked about it, gave my testimony, what I did. And I know the job of a bus driver is a little bit different from an over-the-road truck driver. But before I gave the presentation, I got a full rundown of what bus driver schedules look like. I got the lay of the land. I had made a video with some stretches, which also there will be access to that. I'm going to get that video uploaded somewhere, because there are in-seat exercises you can be doing for core strength that you should and need to be doing, especially at times when you're at shippers and receivers. That core strength needs to be dialed in, help support your lower back. Anyways, so that presentation right there was kind of like the prequel to what I did at Broker Carrier Summit. So I'd like to talk about what I did first, and then I'll kind of get into the event and why it's a robust event that is going to be a very good positive change in the industry. So, and I'm not going to give the whole presentation. I was up there for 30 minutes. I could talk on it again and repeat everything, bring up PowerPoint. It's a waste of time. But essentially, and this has to do with where I'm going forward in regards to fitness, my athletic career. Funny thing to say, right? But we manifest on this show. We manifest here. We talk. We speak it to existence. All right. But essentially, the best thing, I got to walk up to a Kublai Khan song, which go look up the song "The Hammer" by Kublai Khan. Kublai Khan. It's a song that'll make you want to run through a brick wall. But essentially, and the reason why I'm saying this is because I'm going to keep repeating this stuff in episodes to come, because that's how much the narrative needs to be driven home. I started off, the presentation, number one, by respecting the Midwest. I said, man, isn't it great to be back from the Midwest? Had everybody raise their hands. I was like, yeah, man, Kansas City, let's go, baby, the kingdom. But Anyways, first, I was just like, I just got a quick question. There's no right answer. Just show of hands, scream it out. I said, what do you think the number one cause for obesity is out there? Anything. Give me, what do you think the number one reason is? Like I said, there's no right answer. The answer I have is strictly opinion. I don't know if there is a number one answer or if you can actually like scientifically say that there's a number one reason because it cascades. But I think I kind of have a good idea because every reason comes from the answer I'm about to give. And some people shout it out. They're like, well, inactivity. And I said, but yeah, why are they inactive? Like there's a reason why they would choose, why people would choose that, because that's a choice. Inactivity, people would choose that. They say long, a couple people said the long hours, long hours, and they're kind of getting close to trucking. I was like, obesity in general, just like, why do you think it is? Personally, the number one reason, education. And people were like, people started shaking their heads. I immediately went out. I said, how many of you guys woke up this morning, smoked crack? And like, people laughed. I was like, exactly. None of you smoked crack this morning. Do you know why? You were educated on what crack does. It's as simple as that. And that's kind of the inference I've come to when it comes to chronic illnesses and disease in this country is its lack of education. It's the fact that it is not driven home the same way it needs to be, like mathematics and other parts. I mean, we take science classes growing up, but how we live our lives and your lifestyle and your health they're almost like a sidebar. It's almost just like out there, kind of like, yeah, it's there. I know about it, but I'm really busy and I've got this stuff in front of me. When really, if you take care of all that stuff in front of you and you ignore it, eventually all the stuff you care about, you're going to have less and less time and energy and effort to focus on. Long story short. And I went straight into the stats, and I've talked about these stats a lot of times before. 1/3 of the working class population in the United States is considered obese, compared to just the trucking industry, where 2/3 of the trucking industry, so just one job sector compared to the rest of the working class of the country, is double the amount of obesity. Essentially, all chronic diseases are double that of the regular American workforce. I go in all these stats, half of truckers are smokers. And one of the biggest like drivers home that people kind of said was, I compared it, and we talk about this with the driver shortage narrative, with the turnover, how we say, compare the turnover in the trucking industry to that of like police and EMS and firefighters and stuff like that. The same thing can be taken in regards to your health. What if 50% of the cops in your town were all ripping darts? And look, I get it. I'm a former smoker myself. I do think cigarettes are cool. They do look cool. I'm not going to lie. Drilling darts back in the day, nothing better than that iced coffee. I get it, but that's a story for another day. The thing, like, imagine if that's your cops, two-thirds of your cops. And in some towns and cities, I think it is a problem with police, fire, EMS. Some of them probably are suffering from ailments and injuries and chronic disease. And I know it's a problem, but like, imagine if you saw that every day, or any other part of the industry, or any industry you need to trust throughout your daily lives. But just prime example, like, put these stats for your police officers, where say the job of a police officer took 16 years off your life, or firefighter, stuff like that. I'm sure those jobs do. Maybe the stress does maybe take years off, but just put these stats in the U.S. military. Imagine if the U.S. military 2/3 were obese. And I know we have problem with height and weight standards now, but 2/3, like, just duplicate those stats in another industry. Those are fire alarms. Those are red flags. People would be ranting and raving. They'd be all over Twitter and TikTok and Instagram with nothing but opinions about how horrible this is and why the world needs to change and what conspiracy is behind it or anything like that. And I was like, these people are next to you, driving next to your kids. 16-year-old just got your license. That truck next to him might very well be somebody who's on the verge of cardiac arrest or on the verge of a stroke. Like, that is an inherent risk factor every day. Like, that should sound the alarm, period, to everybody in the industry. And, essentially, and where I'm going with this narrative and why it's so important is because it has to do with not just being healthy for you. It has to do with the people around you. And we've been saying this, and big shout out to good friend of the show, Mark Manera, who was also there, Dr. Mark Manera, former guest of the show as well, and what his company is doing at Offshift with their coaching program and platform towards carriers. I understand that he's at he's been working out there with carriers, doing a great job. He's had some great success along the way with personalizing things for drivers. Big shout out to him on that. But it has to do, and this is something that he was talking about when he came on the show, that I reiterate to these people, is it's not just about you when it comes to your health. It's about the people around you. Now, I get it. If you're a lone ranger, you don't have family, you don't have a wife, you don't have kids, you're a nobody, which is probably still not true. Like if there's literally nobody on the planet who doesn't care about you, then fine. Ignore this, turn off the podcast. The message doesn't apply to you. But you probably have siblings, best friends, kids, wife, family, etc. And what we're talking about is that the decisions you don't make in regards to being absolutely, radical about your health are going to affect them. Somebody's going to become your caretaker. And I'm not talking about being able to run marathons. I've said it on the show before, you don't have to. I'm just letting you know that there are no limits to your capabilities as a truck driver. But we're talking about getting into your 60s and 70s and being able to bathe yourself, being able to make your food, just your day-to-day stuff. If any of you have suffered from injuries or if had to tore your ACL, what have you, I'm sure you felt like a piece of garbage when somebody had to wait on you or had to help you shower or had to make your food or anything like that. We're talking about doing your day-to-day tasks. Eventually, somebody's going to have to take care of that for you. And this is a problem that could have been avoided. That's the major underlying issues. We're talking about the future, because once again, you can run and gun and you can take care of the important stuff now. Drive, run the miles, make the money. But when you get into your 40s and your 50s, you can do that in your 20s and 30s. You can beat your body to absolute garbage, to a pulp. You can, guzzle down booze every chance, every opportunity you get. You can do that in your 20s and 30s. The human body is resilient. I can tell you that. But eventually it will catch up and into your 40s, and into your 50s. And if you make it into your 60s, those issues are going to start taking you off the road. If trucking is going to be your career, it is going to start taking you off the road for doctor's appointments, stuff like that. You're going to be put into this corner of you're now going to be having to be given treatment that's going to just keep you alive, not make you live better, so to speak. So you're going to be taking stuff for diabetes. You're going to be taking medications. You're going to be going to these doctor's appointments. You're going to have to do all these tests just to merely stay alive. That doesn't mean your quality of life is going to improve. I'm kind of diving into, something I want to talk about on the show, currently doing 75 hard. And one of the books I'm reading is Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia. And it's about, he uses the term longevity. He doesn't like it, but it's really the only term to use. And this is just the cold, hard truth, is that there are 4 horsemen of death. Essentially, it's cancer, heart disease, neurological disorders like Alzheimer's, and diabetes. Those are the 4 horsemen that eventually end up taking everybody down. And essentially from 1900 to today, people's life expectancy hasn't changed. Now, the stats show it's changed because of vaccines and infectious diseases have gone away. When you take out not having vaccines and you take out the infectious diseases, people's, mortality rates are still virtually the same. Like people die for the same reasons, and eventually at the same age, so to speak. So it's not like we're lucky we live it. Like the only reason people are living a little bit longer is because we have this medicine and technology that grants people more life. But once again, what does that quality look like? If you live to be 80, what if from 70 to 80, it was absolutely miserable. And for 10 years, somebody had to take care of you just to take a bath. Do you want that for an entire decade? That's what we're talking about. And that's the narrative that I'm trying to bring into the trucking industry. That's what I am trying to do. That's the avenue I'm going. And I want to thank everybody who was at that Broker Carrier Summit who had listened to me speak. And I left it off. I had to give a little bit of Tony Robbins, especially at the end. I had to bring my TikTok personality into it and leave people off with a note of why they can be great as well for even the people in the audience, for the people out there. Like, hey, because I was speaking to them as leaders. I was like, you guys are the motor carriers. You are the brokers. You work for these freight tech companies. You're the leaders of the industry. Bottom line, at the end of the day, you can look and just be like, well, it's up to the driver. They should just go look at your Instagram, Lombard, and just follow what you do. That's just saying, like, that's like saying, criminals should just not break the law, or like just do the right thing. Well, guess what? Does it happen? No. Why? Education. Exactly what I said at the top of this conversation. Education, lack of it. It needs to be driven home. It needs to become discipline. Where does discipline come from? Where do these things come from? How does it get driven home? Leaders, leadership. It needs to come from, we're past the point of this. Yes, it is up to the individual to ultimately make the choice, but when it becomes part of the culture, when the leadership, when the companies, when the motor carriers and the brokerages are saying that this is necessary to be successful in this industry, is you need to be absolutely ruthless about your health and wellness and overall, livelihood. Until that becomes the culture, it is not going to happen. Just like all the issues we talk about on the show with turnover, the fake driver shortage, all that other stuff, none of that's going to change until the leaders in the industry start taking note and start bringing it down. And some of them are starting to pay attention, and legacy and media news outlets are starting to pay attention. That's why I got to go on News Nation last summer. And that's how I spoke to this audience. I said, you guys are the leaders. You need to take this and bring this back to your drivers, your companies. You need to take this back to your brokers, anybody who's working a sedentary job, because that's where it's bleeding out to. Yes, this is a pandemic or an epidemic in the trucking industry, but it's also a huge problem nationwide. This is a problem in offices all across the country. Anybody who works a sedentary job, especially for brokers out there. And sorry to the truckers out there if I'm sounding like I'm, rubbing their egos a bit, but brokers got a job too. And some of their jobs is a lot of times on the phones, run and gun all the time, taking care of issues, getting yelled at by guys like us, probably for right reasons, so to speak. But they're being affected in those same ways. Anytime you're sitting like that, that lack of movement it will kill you in the long run. In the introduction to the book, Outlive, that I'm talking about, the number one longevity drug is exercise. There's no way around it. It's the most proven way to get it, to eliminate visceral fat, because visceral fat around your organs is what is going to lead to diabetes, lead to buildup in your heart, and all these other problems. I said, you guys are the leaders. You need to take this back. It needs to come from the top down, this message. That's how we're going to enact any change. And that's where I'm at moving forward with my athletic career. And I know I put that in quotes earlier, but that's exactly what I'm doing. I posted on Twitter last night. Triathlon suit came in. Cheap one, cool one. USA, Stars and Stripes, baby. Let's go. For my first triathlon. By next April, I'm looking to do Ironman Texas, which is in the Woodlands outside of Houston. That's full Ironman. That's 2.4 mile swim, 112 bike, 26.2 on the road. That's where I'm going. And I'm going to start out. I think I can do it now, especially gun to my head. I've been swimming a lot. I can swim basically unlimited. That's the easy part for me, the swimming part. But I need to get a feel for what triathlons are like. Doing the CatTex Tri in May. Waco's got a 70.3. And I think they have a deal for a Texas two-step. You could do another half at the beginning of April or end of March, and then the full at the end of April. And what I'm looking to do with these events is I'm going to start doing these events for this narrative. This is what I'm going to be making content and raising awareness about. And what I'm hoping to do is getting other people in the industry on board with this. At that event, Broker Carrier Summit, it was the first time I had ever had people wait in line just to shake my hand and speak with me. It was humbling. It was very. I couldn't be more honored, and I'm kind of getting a little emotional thinking about it, because in my mind I'm still the 278 pound huge guy driving a forklift. That's who I still am in my head a lot of times, and so to now have these conversations with these types of people, it's very, very humbling. And there's another gentleman there. His name sneaks away from me, but he talked about imposter syndrome, and he said, if you don't have it, then you're probably, full of yourself. And I couldn't take that to heart, because that's something everybody goes through, from an NFL player on down. And more on the NFL in a minute. But it was the first time people waited in line and spoke to me. But so there's people who agree. There are people who think that what I have to say is valuable. There's going to be an opportunity to double down on that. We want to change it, because at the end of the day, and I said this in the presentation, because the reason for the Broker Carrier Summit is to build relationships. That's what it's all about. So brokers and carriers can talk and network and build a relationship to do business together. right after I asked if everybody smoked crack in the intro, I said, hey, this entire event is about building relationships. But guess what? You're not going to be any good at building relationships, or at least maintaining them, until you built that relationship with yourself. At the end of the day, unless you're on good terms with yourself and you're dialed in and you're on the right path, then how are you going to be able to show up for somebody you're trying to do business with? How are you going to be able to maintain that when things on your end are already falling apart? And that's just true in trucking, in brokerage, anywhere you go. That's true. It's the foundation of your success. We think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I need to make a Lombard's hierarchy of needs, and right there at the bottom, nothing happens without that fitness. Nothing in my life started to have an upward trajectory until I decided to change that aspect of my life, on how I took care of myself and how I decided to live and watch what I consumed and how often I consumed it, so to speak. That's the Broker Carrier Summit from my point of view. Now, what did I see and what makes it so important is, there's just too many people to give shout outs to, and I have some of their business cards here, by the way. And I just got to give a recollection. Number one, carrier wise, big shout out. And I hope you're watching, brother, unless you're driving. Hope you're staying safe. His name's Millennial Trucker on Twitter. He's on LinkedIn. Ilya is his first name. I forget your last name, boss. Actually, is it on here? We'll see. Are we on here? Huh. Yeah, yes, Ilya Denisenko, my boy out there. ICV Express. If you're a broker on LinkedIn watching this, or you're working at brokerage anywhere, you want to hit this guy up, carrier-wise. ICV Express. I'm going to show you the card right here. Here's number one reason why, and this is fascinating. On the back of their card, first load under 500 miles, they will deliver free. If it's over 500 miles, they'll do it for 50% off. This guy's a brand new MC. He came into business almost like you'd start any other business, with a partner, an investor. He's got his friend with him, and they're trying to start a good, honest trucking business. They're in a down market. They're betting on themselves. And they came to the summit to hopefully meet some brokers. And there's guys there who want to work with them now. They're running into the issue with the inspections, with how old their MC is, which is another stupid, I get it, kind of a double-edged sword, because we got criminals who are also operating as motor carriers, but you also have guys like ICV Express who have good equipment and a good head on their shoulders, and they're just trying to provide you a good service. And total sales 101 right there. First load free under 500 miles. If you're a broker and listening, call them right now. 931-842-9529. You can email them at icvexpresstrucking@gmail.com. There you go. You got a carrier right now who's got your back. Under 500 miles. It's Friday this week. You got it. You give them a call and you let them know. That's the type of people who showed up at the summit. I just got to give him a big shout out, because I could see he's getting after it. He's doing it. Those are the types of carriers that were showing up there. Watching the event unfold. Number one, besides the brokers and carriers who showed up, shout out to these guys for green screens, for being there. Sorry, these guys, a freight tech company. Is there a reason that they need to be there? Marketing. I don't know. I don't work for them. I could probably sell for them though. I rock this jersey pretty good. Hopefully, if you're Dawn, if you're watching, hopefully I look good in the jersey. But they're out there. My good friends over at Repower were over there. Great time connecting with them. So people who now, number one, Repower, I guess, can probably build relationships with brokers and carriers, and it would help them out. If you feel free to go back to that episode. I bring on some gentlemen from Repower. They're basically the Airbnb of your underutilized trailer assets, in case you are in need of trailers. But so we have people who were at F3 at the Broker Carrier Summit. There you go, right there. So that's the type of event this is becoming. Just watching guys talk shop, get in the network. That's what we need. So compared to other events out there, so we got the Mid-America Truck Show. It's great. Not a lot of broker presence there. The only reason why brokers started coming is probably because of Reed, Lost Freight Reed. He shows up to Matt's. Now people are starting to come. We're making it the thing. Shout out to Dooner, the guys over at What the Truck. They're getting the industry more involved in it. It's a great networking event. It's not like F3. It's a little bit different. There's not a lot of talks. There's not a lot of presentations. It's a truck show at the end of the day with concerts and trucking lore and stories. But you got Matt's, but it's heavily trucker focused and community focused too. You got F3, but again, we were at F3. It's a freight tech conference. The only truckers who are there, me, Gord, Spud, Indie Trucker Chris, like a couple of us are down there, and every person we met, as soon as they found out we had a CDL, they want to talk to us. So you see that there's a craving in this industry to have these conversations. People want to do this. People on the bad side of things. So when we're talking about the brokers who we consider evil, and I've done plenty of bad mouth on brokers on the show, and trust me, there are plenty of I'm sure there's plenty, just like there's not good truckers out there. And we know because we see their videos on TikTok, guys, piss jugs in the parking lot. Let's be real. Just like there's bad truckers, we know that there's a lot of brokers who are wannabe Wolf of Wall Street scum. Everybody knows that. Brokers know that. Truckers know that. We know. We talk to them. I've talked to them on the phone too. I've gone to war with that dude, with one dude over detention. And I've called it out all the time. I've lambasted on this show before. Reed specifically said he appreciated my candidness when talking about brokers when he had listened to my show. So we know that's an issue. But overall, how do we get rid of the bad? How do we force the bad people out? You have to build these relationships and have these conversations at these events. What I'm getting at is big shout out to Robert Bain, by the way. Got to talk to him on Word on the Street, Trey Griggs show. He was out there. Now he calls himself the strongest man in logistics. And Robert, if you're listening, I'm not talking smack. Guy's lit. He can out deadlift me. Let's be real. But he could call himself the strongest man in logistics. I guess I can call myself, maybe I should call myself the fittest. I don't know. I'm probably not the fittest though. There's probably a dark horse out there lurking off TikTok. He's probably done like 5 Ironmans, but regardless, Robert Bain, talked to my Word on the Street, got to hang out with him in person. Phenomenal human being. Such a fun guy to talk to. Somebody commented on his post, and I can't believe that there are critics of this event. Somebody was asking, there were people talking about how this was just like a bro meetup. And I was like, I scratched my head at that, thinking I can't believe, because it's jealousy. Number one, whoever called the Broker Carrier Summit a bro meetup is clearly ripe with jealousy or something, or is high on their horse, or thinks that they're better than other people for some reason. Because how could you ever think that a networking event is just some sort of bro meetup? A networking event for freight brokers and carriers, two people who by on book value technically sort of hate each other. How could you call that a bro meetup? And I love that somebody whipped out the stats. Third of the people there were basically women. And hey, on this show, we love highlighting the ladies in logistics. Blythe Rumleaf, hello. We're talking. How many? Of the amount of flatbedders I've had on this show, most of them have been women. So there are women in this industry who are making headway out there. Shout out to a speaker out there. Got to have her card, Samantha Jones. Great conversation with her. There are women in this industry who are just as fired up about this. So for somebody to think it was a bro meetup, there were some good conversations that were had, good relationships made. But look, I can talk and go on about the event for forever. I can talk, truckers can talk or what have you. But at the end of the day, talking to Robert about this event, he had mentioned about how he's been in the industry a while, and he's known brokers and people in freight and who've worked in freight for 10, 15 years, never met a trucker in real life. This is what we're talking about. This is where change stems from, is by making these events and having them. And I know that there was a little bit of a disagreement on Twitter. Some people think, it's a down market, and do we really need these events when the market sucks and stuff like that? I think it's when you need it the most. Keeps the fire alive. It keeps the engine going. You're running on fumes. Well, keep fucking breathing more fumes into it. Wow, I think that's the first time I cussed on this show in a long time. That one just rolled right out. I've been coaching myself on the cussing, but hopefully the LinkedIn crowd doesn't get too disturbed by it. But man, the event just juiced me up. It's totally changed my outlook on things. And that's what it does. I never, even a year ago, a year ago, by the way, I was in Amarillo today. I went to an Amarillo Sound Poodles game, literally on a 10-hour break. Good friend of mine worked for the minor league team there. Got to arm wrestle the mascot. And I was like, I'm parking in Amarillo tonight, dude. You want to hang out? And I went there a year ago, talking Ironman. Still would have called you crazy. I would have said, when am I going to find the time? Especially because I had no foresight that I was going to be getting off the road, months after that. Never would have thought about it in a million years. And just being at the event, I was thinking to myself, I was like, this is what I got to do. This is where I have to go from shaking people's hands. I'm thinking, what's next? Where do I go? People are agreeing with me. Now what? Okay, here's now what. I'm going to go keep doing some of the most difficult stuff on the planet. If I die doing it, cool. I'd rather die doing an event like that than dying of, I don't know, heart attack or, getting my legs chopped off from diabetes. You know what I'm saying? I'll keep doing some hard events. I'll go to Kilimanjaro. We'll talk Denali one day. We'll talk freaking whatever. We'll talk mountains. I don't care. Whatever we need to do to get this mission out there, because that's what going to this event did. So I'm still like, I can't leave this industry. And this is kind of where I want to leave it with is, my wife, her aunt had passed away recently. We went back to Waterbury, and all the Italians in Waterbury, they all get buried at Calvary Cemetery. When they got to the United States and stuff like that, they all bought the grave sites early. They told the kids, when you die, we're taking you with us. So they have like family burial plots and stuff like that. The Lombards, the first Nicholas Lombard, my great grandfather who founded Lombard, he's buried there next to his wife Clotilda. Real sexy name, right? Real hotties had names back in the day, back in the late 1900s. Those are the names. Not many Clotildas around. It was spelled Clotilda too. Not many of those lurking. But anyhow, I see their grave, and I just look at it, and I think to myself, I was like, I'm just picturing him looking at me, like looking back at me, wondering what he would think. He'd probably think a lot of things right now. Number one, he'd take one look at Waterbury and be like, "What'd you guys do? See what we built? Is this what you do to me?" That'd be probably the first thing he'd say. But I look at that, and we don't shy away from faith and religion on the show either. Me and Trey have talked about it. I've shared my testimony on the show. But without a doubt, no matter what, I mean, the guy's got to be watching from somewhere. And, I'm sure he's just as upset about the demise of, the company he built as, my grandfather was, and as a lot of people were. But if he's watching me, number one, he would hate the trucking industry today based off of what it's become, because he was a union guy. So first and foremost, he would have told me I probably made the best decision by getting off the road because of the amount of scabs and bottom feeders that work in the industry. Terms I heard when I was younger that I never really understood until I started this show. But you figure if he's watching me, what's he going to think? I can either just ignore it, blow it off, leave the industry, just dial in, focus on just Orange Theory, work with training other people, stay in my lane, focus on just myself, run Ironmans just for my own ego. Something doesn't make me feel comfortable about that. That's why, and I know I'm kind of going on time. I know I'm talking. Appreciate you guys tuning in. But that's what separate. I'm trying to separate myself from other fitness influencer types. And I hate using that word because I'm a millennial and we grew up before it existed. And it's a very cringe word. We know that. But what I'm trying to do is influence change. So it's weird. But everybody on there, and I've said this before, where fitness and freight really have a Venn diagram mix is the amount of grifting and the amount of garbage that is out there from people, especially with course sellers and magic pills and snake oils and supplements and all that stuff. I'm not into that. And I get it. To make money, you got to make sales. Like I said, I want to make merch. I'm building a brand. So if I can get a jersey, hats and stuff, we'll throw that your way. Because that's another way to spread the message. That'll be the only thing I'm really selling. Like I said, you want to work one-on-one with me as you're a driver. You want me to coach you? I got you on the First Format, $13 a month. It's not $13 to me. Goes to First Form. I get a little bit of gift card money if you sign up, but I use the app. That's how I track my macros. That's how I dialed in on the road. You want me to one-on-one coaching? I'll do it for you, but I'm not in a position to build some huge coaching program. I'm going to help Mark Monero win. He's got to win. He's got the answer. He's got a system that's so dialed in that it needs to become the industry standard. He's got it. What he has needs to become standard across the industry. So that way, because we have to play the ball how it lies. We talk about that a lot. Dom Toole comes on the show. You have to play the ball how it lies. We're not going to solve the CDL mills and all this stuff overnight. Play the ball where it lies. We could start with fitness. If a guy like Mark Monero's program, Off Shift, can get to these mega carriers who obviously work off churn and burn, really, it's a little bit of an insurgency of Lombard if Off Shift gets into these mega carriers. Because if these drivers start to become elite, they're going to start enacting change within these industries. Then it starts going from the bottom up. And I've said it in all my TikTok videos, and Andy Frisell says this all the time, your personal excellence is your number one rebellion. That's what will happen. So if Dr. Monera's program can get into these large carriers and they can get bought in, and drivers start becoming self-aware and reaching self-actualization, Maslow's hierarchy needs, they start reaching that, their brain fog's going to deteriorate. They're going to start standing up for themselves. That's where the change is going to come. That's how we do it. Because that's been my whole thing from the beginning, from my running videos on TikTok, is you need to get jacked in rebellion against the bad guys, against the megas, the big oligarchs that are running the trucking industry, that are trying to tear it apart and then let robot trucks come in and all this stuff. That's how we're going to do it. So again, I know I just went off a little bit, but that's the avenue I'm going, is building a brand built on changing the culture in this industry. I'm going to need help along the way. Can't do it alone. Hair can only do so much. Glocks can only do so much. I can only run so many marathons and events. So it's going to take a team. It's going to take the people watching this right now. It's going to take some of the companies, the people I had conversations with, to get this message out there. That's what I want to bring. We need to start raising money for charities that matter. Wreaths Across America, Truckers Final Mile. I can run these events. And yes, I want to personally become the best version of myself and see how far I can go as an athlete, especially a triathlete, something I never would have ever considered even thinking about at 24, let alone 34. But that's where it needs to go. It takes ego to do things like podcasts and post the content I have. It takes ego to do a lot of things. You don't think it took ego for Jeff Bezos or Musk to get wherever they wanted to be? Of course it did. Ego is not necessarily a bad thing, but when your ego starts to get in the way of, friendships, relationships, that's when it's a problem. See, I want to use my ego to just have more friendships, to literally just build more relationships, to have people be happier. That's a people pleaser in me. And I know that they can be happier, the healthier and fitter that they get, more proud of themselves that they can get. So that's where we're going. We're going with building a brand. So that way, when you see a Lombard hat one day, if you're a trucker, if you're a broker, oh man, Lombard, dude, you get after it. Oh, Lombard, dude, we're changing, that Lombard, that brand, that company's out there changing lives. Fit Motor Freight, Lombard Fit Motor Freight, that's a Lombard you're wearing. That's where I'm trying to go. Oh, that's the triathlete. That's the guy he does the Ironmans. And he's talking about all the truckers who suffer from these health issues. This needs to be mainstreamed. And I've said it before on the show, the internet and news and legacy outlets are doing everything they can, especially 2024 election year. They're trying to get you driven apart, divide you, talk about Israel, Palestine, still got Ukraine going on. And look, all that stuff sucks and it's bad. I get it. I know people are dying, but take a look at the last 2,000 years, 6,000 years, war after war after war. What are you going to do? Nothing you do right now is going to stop Israel and Palestine. Nothing you can do in your personal life in the next 24 hours, aside from picking up a gun and going over there yourself. You are not going to individually change the war in Ukraine. You're not going to end Israel-Palestine conflict. You're not going to find Coney in Africa like Russian mercenaries are. You're not. It's just the facts. But what you can do, where you can help, what you can do is helping people get healthier. Starts with yourself, starts with sharing the show, starts with sharing the brand, starts with talking about this message, starts with just being my friend at the end of the day. I know I'm getting kind of a little emotional on that, but that's where it starts. That's how we can enact change. Think about it in your exact wheelhouse. You want to change the world? Start locally first. You start here. Then it starts to build out. Just like I said, we get off shipped in those companies. We start helping the little guy. The little guy rises up. That's exactly where we're going to go. And that's exactly where you can see this going. And I'm looking to bring a lot more people on the show, a lot of guests, a lot of guests within the industry, people from green screens, some of the carriers I got to meet. Love to have these people on to tell their stories. If you're listening to this show, you're a trucker out there, would love your story, need your story to get out there, because that's also just as important. Because once again, the foundation is, and when we talk philosophy, and I got two more things, I'm going to let you go. I can't believe I've even been talking for this long. Told my wife 30 minutes, and here I am. But when I send it, I send it. But I was talking to another gentleman because there was a great talk about freight fraud. And I know it's always a hot topic. My good friend Dale Prax was up there talking about Freight Validate. You go back to that episode, you can talk about what Freight Validate's doing. Essentially, they're trying to be like the Carfax of, carrier vetting, so to speak. So that way, you're not working with G-Face. But I was talking to this gentleman about like my philosophy on it, and about how essentially if we're built on this foundation of fitness, like if everybody in this industry is dialed in, like it's kind of talking about how the personal excellence is your number one rebellion thing. Like how if all truck drivers just started getting ruthlessly in shape and we're running marathons, like then they'll be able to hold the companies and carriers accountable, and we can start enacting change. The same thing applied to the fraud in the industry. And it's just an overwhelming thing. Like if we can build that strong foundation where when you think of the freight industry, I said it on LinkedIn, change the headline. Think about the headline of freight industry goes from worst to first in overall health and wellness. When you think about that, if everybody in this industry, if the standard is you got to be a dialed in absolute savage, then the fraudsters aren't going to be able to compete. Because if you're a broker and you see this carrier and you see G-Face Logistics out of Glendale, California, and you go look him up and it looks like G-Face, who looks like he has, he hasn't, he can't do one unassisted pull-up, and you're going to, I ain't doing business with him. That's it right there. Or if you're a motor carrier and you look, oh, look at this brokerage. Oh, you go on their website, you see that they're a company like R2X Logistics out there, who's got probably the nicest gym in the freight industry. Shout out there in the capital of the Midwest, Chicago. Oh, look at this company, brokerage right here. They're dialed in. I want to work with them. And I was explaining to him about how, like, if everybody just gets absolutely shredded, people aren't going to want to work with scumbags. At the end of the day, I was kind of going into that. One thing I want to leave you with, there was a phenomenal guest there. And again, big shout out to Trey, Beta Consulting Group, Dan, you guys at Broker Carrier Summit for a phenomenal event. It's in October in Fort Worth this year, but they had a special guest there, Desmond Clark, NFL player, played in the NFL for 12 years. He played with Shannon Sharp. So if you're not familiar with Desmond Clark, he played for the Bears in the Super Bowl at some point, and he talked about winning. And this is definitely just a point to leave it on, to let you walk out there so that way your next 24 hours, you're a gosh darn winner. Okay. Loved his presentation, went up there. So he owns a company out of Chicago, Bear Down Logistics. Shout out Chicago Bears. Talk about a Midwest respecting here. So former NFL guy has a brokerage, Bear Down Logistics. Also says he wants to come on the show. We're down with that. But he had talked about winning. And one of the first things he did is he had everyone pull out their phones and look up his combine score, his combine grade from the NFL Combine. And it was an F, number one. And where they scored him in his height class, his weight class, and all that stuff. It's just not a caliber NFL player based off of the Combine. But once again, 12 years in the NFL. But along with that, his career in general, he had a diehard great season one year. I forget the exact stats, 6 or 7 touchdowns, 50 some odd catches, so to speak. Comes off a rock star year, ends up getting hurt, and ends up getting an injury in training camp at some point. I believe he was on the Broncos at this time, and then he gets cut, winds up at the Dolphins. Long story short, I'm speaking for him, and sorry, Mr. Clark. You'll tell the full story on the show, but he gets to the Dolphins. He's got to start over. Because yeah, he had these rock star stats and he was very up and coming, but here he was. He has an injury. He's not a starter. What does he do? So he, begs to be on special teams, and he ends up on. I'm not going to say the wrong one, but he ends up on one of the special teams, either the punt return, kickoff return. He ends up on one of them. Works his way back up to being on all of the special teams: field goal block, punt return, kickoff, receiving the kickoff. Ends up getting back on him. And the Bears, when they brought him onto the team, the sole reason why they brought him on, because they didn't have anything to go off. He went from 50 some odd catches and 6 touchdowns to special teams. He had 2 catches. What are and the Bears are trying to give him a starting player's salary. The Bears offered him a starting player's salary to bring him on there. All they had to go off of was last season. Why'd they bring him on? Because the character he showed playing for the Miami Dolphins, playing for the special teams. So when it comes to starting over, when it comes to winning, when it comes to the critics, we talk about being in the arena a lot. We talk about people in the stands, like anybody who called the Carry Summit a Bro Summit, anybody out there who's just rooting against you, who's not on your team, not dialed in, not worth it. But when it comes to starting over, it's in every aspect of my entire life. I've had to start over. Graduated high school, started over, joined the Marines, 4 years, combat deployment, water survival instructor, ended up getting out. Regret it. Go back to that episode if you want. Get out, started over, go to college, have to be a college person, play lacrosse in college. You don't have to, be starting over, building all the way up, graduate college. It ends, start over, enter the real world, enterprise rent-a-car, work up, management assistant, get a promotion up there. The job eats me alive. I get super fat, start over, get another job, work in a warehouse for 3 years, starting over, move to Texas, start over, get CDL, start over, work for a company, start over, work for another, buy a truck, start over and over again. You will always start over no matter what. And that's where people get lost. They always think because they have to start over, they've lost all their progress. It's absolute bullshit. It's nonsense. Starting over is a part of life. That's right there in Goggins' first book, Can't Hurt Me, Day 1, Week 1. That's the book that absolutely changed my life from the moment I started reading it when I went over the road with my trainer at PAM Transport. That book is exactly what set on me the current trajectory that I've been on ever since. Because when I got on the road, the thought never crossed my mind about marathon. As soon as I read that book, I knew I had to become absolutely ruthless. Didn't know where it would take me. I didn't know it would take me out in front of a stage of 350 people, but here we are. And that's what happened. So when it comes to starting over and thinking you're not a winner or thinking you can't win, take that thought out of your mind. It's absolutely irrelevant. Because what if you just, I'm an F in the combine score? You just keep taking all that negative garbage into heart. You start listening to that, then no one would get anywhere at the end of the day. You're going to start over. You're going to have to get a new job. You're going to have to do this. These are going to be a part of life. It's a part of the process. It's a part of training. Just dominate it from day one every time you got to start over. Go at it with the same tenacity that you left off with on your final day at the last thing you did. Just go in, head full of steam. Be willing to learn, ask questions, ask dumb questions, get laughed at for the questions you asked. That is straight out of Napoleon's textbook. Get laughed at for those questions. Because guess what? Napoleon was getting laughed at for asking those questions when he took over the army of Italy. Got laughed his way all the way to the most winningest general of all freaking time. So let's be real on the idea of asking questions. But I'm going to leave you with the same thing I left people at the Broker Carrier Summit with. And I appreciate you all for tuning in, especially on Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. Very much appreciate you guys. Again, I'm starting from this episode on, starting over. We got another episode to do soon. Starting over. And that's where we're going forward. But we recently celebrated the anniversary of Lexington and Concord. It's on April 19th, 1775. Lexington, Concord. That's in Massachusetts for any overseas listeners out there. I see you. I know there's a couple people in Germany and stuff. I see it on Spotify for podcasts. I see where you're tuning in. A couple Lithuanians. I know you're out there. Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts, April 19th. Lexington Green, beginning of the day, 77 dudes right there in Lexington Green. They stood across the field from British military. At the time, strongest military in the world. They ruled the planet. Their Navy owned the entire planet. Their army was the strongest in the world. They just defeated France in this war. They basically own most of North America. These guys are top dogs. the 77 people who stood on the Lexington Green that day, you think that they were, you know, who do you think that they were? Who do you think that those 77 guys were? You think that they were just like these crazy, you know, savage, you know, rich dudes or like prominent, powerful people? Nope. They were blacksmiths, tailors, the most, you know, probably jobs that are very obsolete now, farmers, you know, maybe a couple wagon drivers, a couple truckers, a couple colonial truckers were out there. 77 ordinary people decided to stand across the field from the strongest military in the world. Take that into account real quick. Put yourself in that position. Put yourself on the Lexington Green, 70-75. You got a gun. Who knows if it even works? You're wearing overalls, whatever. You don't even got a uniform. You got one guy who's probably like old alcoholic who's leading you on the green, and you're standing across the field from the most dialed in military of all time that's ever existed in the history of your life. And you're just like, yup, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna stand there. They were 77 ordinary people. How did it end up? Absolute victory is absolutely how it ended up. The British retreated all the way back to Boston after taking a massive L at Concord. And guess what? After that, they had to start over again. The people at the Lexington Green, the people fought that. They had to start over. They had to go back. They had to win an entire war. They had to lose New York, lose Philadelphia, only to win it all the way back. Talking about the American Revolution. A lot of ordinary people had to do a lot of extraordinary things. You guys are capable of doing that out there. I know it's tough. I know I'm not out there with you guys on the road suffering, and I have a sense of guilt for that sometimes. Trust me. I feel it. I'm like, man, I should leave all this behind, get back out, you know, get back behind the wheel, call up Jamie Hagan, be like, dude, throw me in. I'm doing pull-ups on your flatbed. And I would love to, but guess what? My situation is different. So I'm going to do what I can with what I have, where I can. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep doing pull-ups. I'm going to keep getting and become the most elite endurance athlete I can, that the Lombard genes and brain allows me to be. But I can tell you, if Nikki and John Lombard were able to pedal some ice out of a horse and carriage and grow to be the largest motor carrier in the Northeast, I don't think that there's any reason why somebody with their same DNA can't run a couple triathlons, raise some money, and change some people's lives and get them living better lives, longer lives, and fighting harder for an industry that needs it the most. Again, want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll see you soon on the next one. Stay safe out there. A lot of tornadoes in the Midwest. Once again, you want to hop on and just record a show, drop me a line, shoot me a text. More content, the better. You know, at the end of the day, it's all about real stories from real people. Mentioned influencers earlier. That's the problem now. These influencers, they became popular because people liked their real personalities. They liked reality. You know, people are in a world full of so much lack of authenticity, fake news, fake narratives. People are craving real. They want real things from real people. And I like to think I'm a real guy. A lot of you have listening. I've met you in real life. You know me. I'm not rich. Trust me. Many of you, if you're listening, you probably make more money than me. You know, I'm not loaded or anything like that. I don't have anything besides my hair. I don't. That's all I got, baby. Driving the same car since I got from 2011. No G-Wagons in this garage. But we need real stories from real people out there. That's also part of the mission right there. Getting you the truck driver story. And yeah, even you guys, the brokers out there, we want to hear your story too, because you can get it from the opinion of a guy like me who's a driver. We can, you know, who has spent time as a driver over the road. Also, we can get some drivers on. We can do some roundtables. More conversations, the better. Let's open it up. That's how the Broker Carrier Summit left us. Said, as you leave here, keep the conversation going. That's exactly what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do at the Lombard Trucking Show. That's what we're doing with the Lombard Fit Motor Freight brand. That's what we're doing. We're hammered down all the way. Again, thank you guys so much. Take care. Have a great week. I will talk to you all very soon. You can find me anywhere on the internet. You know the deal, at Lombard Trucking. Until next time, it's back to the bench.